He was supposed to die that morning. A helpless husky pup left to freeze beneath the pines of Missoula. But just as nature was about to close in, something changed. A lone wolf stepped from the fog not with teeth, but with tenderness. What happened next would rewrite everything we thought we knew about predator and prey, and the meaning of family. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. Missoula, Montana. Late October. The air was heavy with mountain fog and the early hush of an autumn dawn. Pines stood like sentinels along the edges of Bitterroot Forest, their needles beaded with dew, their silence broken only by the occasional chirp of a lone raven. The road ahead twisted in gentle curves as it cut through the trees, half wild, half forgotten. June Everhart squinted through her windshield. She drove slowly, not just because of the narrow turns, but because she was always searching. At 39, June had spent the last 15 years capturing the quiet language of the wild through her camera lens, her dark green jacket speckled with years of pine sap and dust held the scent of wind and moss. Her chestnut hair, usually tucked under a wool beanie, fell in soft waves when unbound. June wasn't loud, not in voice or presence. Her strength was her stillness. Animals trusted her silence. Nature seemed to lean toward her as if it too wanted to be seen. That morning, she wasn't hunting a photo. She was chasing a feeling, the one that prickled at the base of her neck when the forest had something to say. As her Jeep crested a low hill, something caught her eye on the roadside. A small mound of fur, motionless, curled in on itself. She braked gently. Her heart, always trained to leap at such sights, did so with practiced pain. Probably another victim of a careless driver, she thought. But when she stepped closer, she noticed the slight rise and fall of the creature's ribs. It was a puppy, a husky, no more than 9 weeks old. Its coat was pale gray, tinged with white like fresh snowfall before the first boot print. Ribs stuck out like twigs beneath matted fur. Its paws were cracked, its baby blue eyes barely open 2 fragile windows, full of hunger and hurt. June knelt, little hands outstretched. "Hey, little guy," she whispered, but the pup whimpered and tried to pull itself away. It had no strength, only the memory of what strength had once felt like. Then she heard it. A low rustle in the brush. Sharp, deliberate. Out of the shadows stepped a wolf. She was lean, but not starving her fur, a deep charcoal dusted with silver. Her eyes were amber and intelligent. Muscles rippled beneath her coat as she approached the puppy, not June. June froze, instinct telling her to retreat, but her curiosity rooted her to the earth. She ducked behind a nearby thicket, camera in hand, holding her breath as the wolf advanced. There was no snarl, no rush of teeth. The wolf, wild, majestic, lowered her head and touched her nose to the puppy's side. Then, as gently as if it were her own, she began to lick the pup's fur, cleaning the dirt and blood in rhythmic motions. The husky didn't flinch. In that moment, predator and prey vanished. What remained were 2 souls, one broken, the other answering. June slowly lifted her camera. The shutter clicked, once soft and reverent. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Wolves didn't adopt dogs. This wasn't some cartoon fantasy. This was raw, wordless compassion, a miracle stitched together in the mist. The wolf turned, nudging the puppy, who tried shakily to stand. June watched, half wanting to intervene, half knowing she shouldn't. The puppy leaned against the wolf's flank, and the 2 disappeared into the tree line like ghosts. June followed at a respectful distance, each step deliberate, quiet. Her boots barely disturbed the carpet of pine needles. She saw them pause near a shallow ravine, then vanish beneath the gnarled roots of an old oak. From within the shadows, faint yips echoed. Puppies, wolf pups. June crept closer, stopping just short of the den's edge. From her vantage point, she could make out 3 small forms, wolf pups sniffing curiously at the new arrival. The husky, still trembling, didn't resist. One of the wolf pups licked his nose. Another pawed at his side playfully. The mother, now clearly Luna in June's mind, a name born of the silver marks along her fur, curled around all 4 babies. June backed away, breath trembling. She would come to name the puppy later, Coda, meaning friend, in a forgotten tongue. But for now, she returned to her jeep in stunned silence, replaying the moment again and again. That night, she couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of wonder. The forest had offered her something rare, and she knew this was only the beginning. The mist had thinned by the next morning, replaced by a sharper wind that hinted winter wasn't far behind. The trees whispered above the bitterroot woods, speaking in rustles and sighs. Somewhere within them, June Everhart pitched her tent just beyond the perimeter of the wolf den. It wasn't a true camp, just a low camouflage blind tucked beneath spruce branches hidden from view, but with a narrow sight line to the den's entrance. June had always believed in patience. It was the first thing you learned in wildlife photography, and the last thing you ever mastered. But what she witnessed now was beyond any lens. This was the slow, sacred unfolding of something wild and improbable. Each morning she returned before sunrise, before the forest stirred, bringing with her not interference, but quiet observation and a small offering. A wrapped bundle of rabbit meat, placed a safe distance from the den, left as tribute to the unexpected family. Coda was changing. Day by day, the husky pup grew stronger. He still limped slightly on his right leg, but the stiffness was fading. His fur now had a clean shine to it, and his belly no longer looked caved in. He had begun to follow Luna on short hunting trips awkwardly at first, tumbling over fallen branches and tripping on roots, but learning. The 3 wolf pups accepted him more each day, nipping his ears, pouncing on his tail, teaching him in the only language they knew, play. One of the wolf pups, the smallest, stood out. June would later name her Ember. She was lithe and quiet, her coat a dusky red-brown unlike her gray siblings. Ember was the first to nuzzle Coda when he arrived, and the first to curl up beside him in sleep. Wherever Coda went, Ember followed as if sensing in him a softness she herself carried. But paradise has its shadows. The first sign came as a half-eaten hare left near June's blind. It wasn't Luna's kill, too messily torn, too fresh. The next came in the form of scattered feathers, a mourning dove pulled apart at the base of a pine. Then came the tracks. Paws, narrow and long, pressed into the mud near the creek coyotes. Coyotes weren't rare here, but they were opportunists. A weakened pup, a hybrid outsider. They'd smell it. They'd wait. June grew uneasy. She didn't want to intervene unless absolutely necessary, but the thought of Coda being lured into the underbrush, never returning, gnawed at her. She began to sleep lighter, even in her blind, her hand always resting near her camera tripod, heavy metallic, potentially useful if things went wrong. Then came the day that tipped the balance. It was late afternoon. Golden light dripped through the trees like warm honey. June had just noted Coda's progress, stalking a vole with Ember by his side, when distant laughter broke the forest's rhythm. Voices. Human. Through her lens she spotted them, a group of 4 hikers weaving between trees, none of them subtle. Loud jackets. Plastic water bottles clinking. Laughter that felt foreign in this part of the forest. June's stomach dropped. The wolves heard them too. Luna froze at the den's mouth, ears pricked. Her pups instinctively crouched behind her, but Coda barked. Not a warning growl, not a low-throated alert. A full-throated, unmistakable bark, a domestic sound that did not belong here. The hikers stopped. One of them pointed. Another raised a phone. Luna growled sharply, then spun, nudging her pups, including a confused Coda, into the shadows. But Coda hesitated, his tail wagging slightly, unsure whether these approaching creatures were friends or threats. Luna gave a second, firmer growl, and this time, Coda obeyed, though slower, more reluctantly. They disappeared. June emerged from her blind before the hikers could reach the den. She intercepted them on the path, friendly but firm. "I'm documenting wildlife," she said calmly. "You're close to a protected den site. I'd appreciate it if you gave the area space." The group, young and unaware, apologized and turned back the way they came. But the damage had been done. That night, June didn't see Luna or the pups, not even Coda. The clearing was silent. The next morning, she found new prints deeper in the woods now. Luna had moved the den. She was protecting her family, all except for Coda. She spotted him alone in a hollow, hours later, curled beneath a thicket, eyes wide, and lost. When she knelt down, he didn't run. He didn't bark. He simply rested his head on his paws and sighed. That sound shattered something in June. The next few days passed slowly. Coda rejoined the pack, but something had shifted. He kept more to himself, watching the others instead of joining in. His bark, once spontaneous, now came only in silence when no one else was near. June knew the truth. Luna cared for him. But the wild had rules, and Coda, no matter how hard he tried, could not always fit within them. The forest had quieted, but not in peace. It was the hush that followed tension, the lull before a storm, fully understood. The sun barely rose for 3 days, veiled behind clouds that hung low over the Bitterroot Range. Each dawn came dim, the light thin and colorless, casting the woods in a permanent hush. In that grayness, Coda lay curled beneath a black pine, unmoving, untouching. His body was warm, but his spirit had dimmed. He no longer chased the pups through fallen leaves. He ignored Ember's playful nips. He didn't respond to Luna's soft growls urging him to follow. He simply watched, eyes empty, ears, flat spirit detached. Even the warmth of her fur beside him didn't stir him anymore. June watched with growing concern from her blind. She knew heartbreak when she saw it. Coda wasn't sick. He was grieving. The bark that had set him apart had also left him outside the only family he'd ever known. After 3 days of stillness, June made a decision that twisted her heart in quiet rebellion. That afternoon, she gathered Coda in a blanket and carried him gently to the Jeep. He didn't resist. His eyes met hers, tired but trusting, as she placed him on the passenger seat and whispered, "Let's figure this out, little guy." Missoula was 40 minutes away. The wind tugged at the Jeep's frame as pine forest gave way to open plains and sleepy suburbs. June drove without music, glancing sideways at Coda every few minutes. He didn't look out the window. He didn't make a sound. The clinic stood at the edge of town, an old brick building with hand-painted signs of owls and lynxes along the gate. Inside was Dr. Noah Rivers, a man in his mid-50s, known more for saving foxes and bald eagles than for friendly conversation. He wore a fraying plaid shirt beneath a white coat, his hair peppered with gray, his voice low and measured. His eyes, however, were sharp, like a hawk who'd seen too many things, but still cared. June explained Coda's story while Noah performed the checkup. He hummed thoughtfully as he examined the pup's ears, heart, and limbs. "He's in excellent shape." "Physically," Noah said, finally placing the stethoscope aside. "Better than most rescue pups I've seen." But he paused, studying the pup's face, his coloring. "Mind if I take a genetic swab?" June blinked. "Why? I've seen that coat pattern before. And those eyes. He's not pure husky. There's something else here." Minutes later, the swab was complete and sent to a lab Noah used for wildlife studies. He offered June tea while they waited. She declined, choosing instead to sit beside Coda on the floor. He laid his head in her lap, sighing quietly. The results came back quicker than expected. 20%, Noah said, squinting at the screen. "Wolf ancestry, probably from a wolf dog breeding program. Illegal ones used to run out near Libby before the feds cracked down." June felt a chill move through her. It explained so much. The way Coda read body language like a native wildling, his sensitivity to sound, his ability to follow Luna's silent commands without words. That explains his pull to them, she said softly. He's in between. Noah nodded. 2 wolf for dogs, 2 dog for wolves. It's a hard road. Later that evening, back at her cabin in the woods, June opened the door and froze. Luna was standing at the edge of the tree line. She didn't growl, didn't approach. She just stood still, her amber eyes fixed on the open doorway. Coda stirred inside the cabin. For the first time in days, his ears perked. He jumped down from the blanket-covered couch and padded to the door. When he saw her, he let out a sound, half whimper, half bark, and wagged his tail. June stepped back. Coda took a step forward, then another. Luna didn't move. June watched heart tight as Coda reached the edge of the porch and sat down. He looked back at June, then at Luna. His entire body trembled with decision. She whispered, "Go on." He went. They met halfway, nose to nose. Luna didn't scold. She didn't turn away. Instead, she gently brushed her muzzle along his cheek, then turned, leading him back into the woods. June stood in the doorway long after they disappeared, her arms folded across her chest, the chill of evening settling deep. She didn't sleep that night. By morning, the clouds had thickened. A storm loomed. June packed a small bag, her camera a flashlight, and set out into the forest. Something gnawed at her chest, a weight that wouldn't lift. When she reached the old den, she found signs of struggle. Trampled leaves, deep paw prints, blood scattered but fresh. Coyotes, 3 of them. She followed their trail past the creek, her breath caught in her throat. Then she heard it. A bark, fierce, wild, urgent. She broke into a run. Through the trees, she saw them. Luna standing protectively in front of her pups, fur bristled. The 3 coyotes circled, jaws bared. And in the middle of it all, Coda barking with reckless fury, trying to drive them back. He lunged. 1 coyote flinched. June grabbed a rock and hurled it. It cracked against a trunk near one of the coyotes, startling it. She shouted, waving her arms, her voice slicing through the woods. The coyotes hesitated, then bolted into the underbrush. Silence returned. Luna turned to Coda, who had a deep scratch down his shoulder. She licked the wound, slow and deliberate, her eyes closing, as if in silent thanks. June stood at a distance, not wanting to break the moment. She knew deep down that something had changed. Coda hadn't just returned to the pack. He'd earned it. Winter had not yet arrived in full, but its whispers were everywhere in the frost that clung to the cabin windows, in the breath that curled like smoke from mouths, and in the hush that fell over the forest each evening. The trees of bitterroot held their leaves tightly now, and the sky turned silver long before dusk. In this quiet space, a fragile peace had begun to root itself. Luna no longer stayed hidden deep within the woods. Instead, each morning and evening, she would appear with her 3 pups at the edge of the clearing near June's cabin. She never crossed the invisible line between wild and domestic, but she allowed her children to inch close to it. Sometimes, Ember would roll in the grass only feet from June's porch, while her siblings nipped at Coda's tail in the low morning light. June, ever observant, had not expected this trust. She began to leave scraps of rabbit or pheasant near the tree line, not too close, just enough. Over time, Luna accepted them not with eagerness, but with a kind of regal tolerance. As the routine solidified, June began building something more deliberate, a fenced woodland glade near her property's edge, made from natural materials, felled logs, interwoven branches, and hidden mesh to protect the space from outside threats. She called it the Learning Grove. Here, Coda and the pups could roam freely under her watchful eye, a space between 2 worlds neither wild nor wholly tamed. Coda thrived in this new role. No longer unsure of where he belonged, he had become a bridge. He taught Ember and the others how to recognize human scent trails, how to avoid wire traps, and which sounds signaled safety or danger. They learned, quickly adapting their play to include mock stalking and boundary alerts. But Coda was learning too. Luna had begun to take him on longer journeys into the deeper forest, teaching him how to track injured animals, how to move without rustling a single leaf, how to listen with his whole body. One day she led him to a frozen stream and waited. Hours passed. No one moved. Then with one swift lunge, she pinned a rabbit that had broken cover. Coda followed suit days later, clumsier, but improving. June watched all of this from her camera blind and began recording everything not just with photos, but detailed field notes. She sensed this was bigger than her. This was story and science in one. And then one cold afternoon, someone knocked on her cabin door. The woman standing there wore a wool coat lined with cedar-colored fur and carried a field tablet under one arm. Her hair was snow white, though her face was young, perhaps late 30s. Her voice was smooth, controlled. "I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez, director at Clearwater Wildlife Conservancy," she said. "We've been following your submitted reports, and more recently, your images." June stepped aside, startled. "You came all the way out here. Your work's causing waves," Elena said, stepping into the warmth of the cabin. "Wolves and dogs don't do this. Not naturally. Your pup, Coda, he's rewriting rules. And your Luna, she's extraordinary." They spoke for hours by the fire, sharing data and watching footage. Elena proposed a vision, a sanctuary, a protected zone not far from Missoula, where interspecies relationships like Coda and Luna's could be observed, studied, nurtured. It would be called Luna Reserve. "We'd build a habitat that mimics this place, but safer, more controlled. We'd let them choose, of course. It wouldn't be captivity, it'd be refuge," Elena said. June hesitated. "They're wild, Elena. I can't cage what trusted me." "You're not caging them," Elena replied gently. "You're building a place where no one else can hurt them." The next morning, June told Luna, not in words, but in her own way. She approached the edge of the glade with Coda at her side and placed a small flagstone painted with a white crescent Luna's name symbolized. Then she backed away and waited. Luna came at dusk. She sniffed the stone, looked at Coda, looked at June, and then slowly sat down. Permission. 2 years passed quietly, but nothing about them was uneventful. Seasons flowed like paint across the Missoula wilderness, brushing color across the evergreens and snowfall over the pines. What began as an improbable bond between a lone wolf and a starving pup had evolved into something far more enduring, a community stitched not by instinct, but by choice. The Luna Reserve now spanned nearly 300 acres of protected forest land, bordered by whispering aspen, and watched over by a modest outpost cabin nestled in a clearing. That cabin was home to June Everhart, no longer just a photographer, but now the quiet guardian of the wild's most unusual family. Her presence was steady, but never invasive. And over time, the forest began to accept her, not as a visitor, but as one of its own. Coda had grown into a striking adult, sleek, muscled, and graceful in motion. His coat was silver-tipped and thick against the cold, and his amber gold eyes glowed with the fierce attentiveness of his wolf lineage. Though still husky in frame, his posture and stride bore Luna's imprint. He led the younger generation of wolves like a calm older brother, teaching through example, patient when they faltered, firm when needed. The original 3 pups, Ember, Flint, and Ash, had matured into strong young adults, each with distinct personalities. Ember remained close to Coda, thoughtful and sharp-eyed. Flint was bold and impulsive, often the first to chase the last to yield. Ash was quieter, more reserved, often seen resting near June's cabin, watching humans with cautious curiosity. But it wasn't just wolves who made Luna Reserve their home now. Word of the sanctuary had spread through scientific circles and conservation networks. A slow trickle of partnerships had blossomed into a steady rhythm of collaboration. Researchers came in rotation, staying for weeks in nearby lodges, documenting behavior, analyzing scent trails, even establishing primitive language mapping between species. Yet the core of it all remained untouched: the trust, the silent understanding between wild and human, embodied by Coda and Luna. Then, one golden evening in late September, everything shifted once more. June was writing field notes near the porch when she spotted movement along the lower trail. At first she assumed it was Ash returning from one of his long solo excursions. But as the shape drew closer, she stood abruptly. It was not a wolf, nor any known creature of the reserve. It was a stray dog, a large, mud-caked shepherd, mixed with a torn ear, one eye clouded by injury, and ribs pressing hard against his skin. He walked with a limp every step, hesitant eyes wide, with both hunger and fear. June stepped forward slowly, but before she could act, a rustle from the tree line stopped her. Luna appeared, not from aggression but instinct. She padded down the slope, followed closely by Coda and Ember. Coda's ears twitched forward, his nose sniffing the air. The stray stopped, legs trembling, tail tucked low. He made no sound, as if he expected violence. Instead, Coda approached, slowly, deliberately, and then lowered his head in a gesture of peace. Luna followed suit, circling the dog, once nose brushing over his mud-caked coat. She licked behind his ear, gently, cleaning the grime without judgment. The stray collapsed to the ground, not in fear, but in relief. Moments later, the younger wolves bounded from the trees, yipping in excitement, sniffing and nudging the newcomer as if he had always belonged. June stood motionless on the porch, terror stinging her eyes. In that moment, the boundaries that once ruled the forest territory dominance bloodline had evaporated. In their place remained only one law: compassion. That night, the stray slept beside Ember beneath the moonlight, his breathing steady and safe. June watched from the window, her heart aching in the most beautiful way. 2 weeks later, the dog now named Wren had fully recovered thanks to daily meals and rest. He bore scars of cruelty June would never ask about, but his eyes had softened. He followed Coda everywhere, mimicking his movements, slowly relearning trust. Luna kept a protective watch over him but never imposed. Her pack had space for one more. As fall deepened, Dr. Elena Rodriguez returned with a small team to install new observation stations and check on the growing pack. She stood beside June one morning, sipping hot tea, as Coda and Wren wrestled gently in the leaves. "I never thought I'd witness this," Elena whispered. "Not just cross-species bonding, but full inclusion." June smiled. "They don't ask where you come from, just whether you'll stand with them." At the edge of the forest, Luna lay on a sun-drenched stone. Eyes closed, her breathing slow and even. Ash rested beside her. Coda stood beneath a pine, with Wren on one side, Ember on the other. Behind them, the younger wolves tumbled through moss and needles, no longer strangers to human presence, but shaped by love that never asked them to change. For the first time in her life, June no longer felt like a witness to nature. She felt like its student. As the sun dipped below the tree line and the air turned crisp, she stepped down from the porch and sat among them. Wren wagged his tail and leaned into her side. Ember nuzzled her arm. Even Luna opened one amber eye and gave a low, contented huff. In the forest near Missoula, where rules were once carved in blood and fear, a new truth had taken root. Family doesn't need matching fur. It only needs a place to begin. Sometimes the families we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. In a world that often divides us by appearance, background, or fear, this story reminds us that love, trust, and loyalty can come from the most unexpected places. A wolf, a dog, and a woman found each other not by blood, but by courage, and built a life that redefined what it means to belong. In our daily lives, we all meet people who feel different, who seem like outsiders. But maybe they're just waiting for someone to see them, to give them a chance. Maybe like Coda and Luna, we're all just looking for a place to be safe, a place to be loved, a place to begin. If this story touched something in you, take a moment to share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment and tell us what family means to you. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story like this one. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply care.